changing habit is somehow the same as changing religion.
Important was the risk associated with the brands of university if they don't get it right.
You know, games can play a role as a component to engage students, but also provide a more experiential, practical aspect to students' education.
We were talking about everything being recorded. If everything's recorded, everything can be assessed.
If it is recorded, you can listen, you can watch the lecture 10 times, 20 times until you understand. Face-to-face lecture, you miss the class, you don't get it.
The online education classroom that we have been talking about, we are talking about the delivery. For me, education is much more than that.
So for me, an ideal classroom, whether it's online or in person, are the students engaged?
Good morning. Good morning and thank you for attending this morning our World Assessment Council webisode. And today's topic is that we'll cover is what's inside an ideal online classroom. Now this has many different areas for different sort of establishments. So I'll be really interested in hearing what the conversations will be today, the topic on this particular topic, and also what can we do from all the panelists across the world? What will be the solutions for getting this up and running? So I'd just like to start with the opening statement for today. So the World Assessment Council is on a mission to empower every educator on earth to go online and use it as a tool for enhanced learning outcomes and greater experiences for their students. We do the same by continuously engaging with influencers in the education domain and companies, edtech startups that can provide a vehicle to drive that vision. Educators This Week is an attempt to establish that dialogue with renowned educators to discuss trending and enlightening ideas that shall define the future of education. Now that's a whole statement in itself, and it's took me a while to get my tongue and teeth around that. So just to start, I'll introduce myself. My name's Dijonn Taylor. I'm here in the UK, Manchester, and I'm the founder of two companies, Young Graduate and Savvy Guest, and both of those companies really promote and encourage the quality in education and employment. So I would like to start by introducing the panel that we have today. Very esteemed panel, so thank you again for your contributions that will be coming up. So first of all, we've got Dr. William Cope. Bill Cope, as he probably likes to be called, is a professor in the Department of Education Policy, Organisation and Leadership at the University of Illinois, William. So I'd just like to open up the floor to you, William, just to tell us about your thoughts on the topics today.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me, and very nice to meet everybody. So, you know, what are the most important things we need to do in online education? Well, I'm going to mention the areas where online education fails and things that we need to address. So one of the areas is it's often a lonely business. You know, it's you and the screen. You know, you're watching a video and doing a quiz. So one challenge is to set up lines of collaboration, you know, which is how do you get students to work together in online environments, which isn't necessarily just talking to each other in Zoom. How do they do joint work? How do they peer review each other's work? How do we monitor and assess what happens in discussion boards, which is often purely marginal. So there are big questions there about how you build these as social learning environments. Another question is the issue of whether you're an active learner or a passive learner. Too often in online, as I say, you read the chapter of the e-textbook or you watch the video, you do the quiz. So it doesn't involve active knowledge production and knowledge sharing. So they're just a couple of areas. I could mention a number of others as well, but there are a number of areas where we've got to work hard in the whole online education area to make an impact.
Thank you so much for that, Bill. And then I want to move on to our second panellist today, I should say. And we're going to go to Professor Yasar Ozden. And Dr. Ozden is a renowned voice in online education from Turkey and is a professor at Eastern Mediterranean University, Turkey. So welcome, Professor Ozden, and I'll also ask you to give your thoughts on the topic of today's session of what's inside an ideal online classroom.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting and all the participants to have them here. I would like to say something about the COVID-19 and also make some definitions, especially when we hear BC means before Christ, but according to me, before COVID-19, and AD means after disease. So the education is completely changed and nothing will be the same in near future and the future. Especially, I would like to say something about face-to-face, online, and blended learning types. In 2009 and 10, Department of Education in the States made or published a meta-analysis about the definition of face-to-face, online, and blended learning. And as a result of that meta-analysis, they offered that the blended form of it is much more beneficial for the educational settings. So, blended learning, in terms of the media, I mean, for example, we are using the electronic or the synchronous one. In addition to that, we can use asynchronous form of it. But at the same time, we can also use some instructivist theories and constructivist theories together. So this is a new age, and it's not the same as the previous one. Because in the past, as a result of the Industrial Revolution first, we just tried to educate people to give them some kinds of skills. But at this time, skills is not enough. Classrooms requires online instructors, and online instructors are not the same as face-to-face instructors. So we should keep our mind, and what does it mean when I say online instructor? What sort of skills or knowledge or behaviors, attitudes they should have? So I think we have to reform all our educational systems on the earth, and by keeping all those information in our mind, and we made proper changes. Because after disease, AD, this will be not the same as the previous one, before COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Ozden, for that. Some interesting points coming out of there as well. Reforming education systems is a big one, which I'm hoping we can get some clarity on that through this discussion today. So we'll go on to our next speaker, if I may, which is Dr. Rao. And Dr. Rao is joining us from India. And he is the Vice Chancellor, MIT of World Peace University, India. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Rao. Looking forward to what you have to say on this topic today. So if you want to just give us a short intro in what you're hoping to find and your thoughts on the topic, that will be absolutely marvellous. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. But I thought I found more questions than answers. What is this ideal? What is this ideal classroom? Am I asking a student, what is your ideal classroom? Someone in Africa who would say, hey, come on, give me a roof on my head. I'll talk to me about classroom. And then talk to me about ideal classroom. Then talk to me in online ideal classroom. So if we don't know what context that we are talking about this ideal classroom, it would really not count for anything, because it's not about getting gadgets. It's not about going to adopting technology. So that's what I would look at in the way. But do I say that ideal classroom doesn't exist? No, we have to find a way. What exactly is a classroom? Are we talking about laptops or say air conditioners, big furniture? No. Even without all this, a classroom can still exist. A classroom does necessarily need a teacher and a taught. So my idea of an ideal classroom is the one in which the teacher and the taught progress through the knowledge sharing with as much interactive sessions as possible. It's not that the teacher keeps teaching and students simply listens. It's not one-way transmission, or it's not one-way reception. So it should be an ideal classroom. We should work towards till the last knowledge seeker we are able to provide. So that's when I would say an ideal classroom where we should be talking about. So with that, I think I'll rest here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Very interesting. I guess what I heard from that is that in the context of what you were speaking about the perceptions of what an ideal classroom means to many different people in many different places. And that's a real interesting question. And I think it's something that we need to delve in a little more. So you're in India, I'm in the UK, we have panelists in the USA, and we have Indonesia, Turkey. And what is an ideal classroom? That is such an incredible question to ask. So thank you for that contribution for now, and I'm sure we'll come back to you very soon as we move on to our next panelist. So we're heading to a beautiful part of the world, United Arab Emirates. So we are going to have a discussion, have this panelist in our discussions today, which is Dr. Deena Elsori. So a little bit about Deena Elsori, Dr. Elsori. She's the Associate Dean at Abu Dhabi University in the United Arab Emirates, a trusted academic leader with a distinct track record in accrediting and managing applied science programs. Outstanding interpersonal skills that allow for positive interaction with internal and external stakeholders. So if you would like to just give your views and sort of consider what you think about an ideal classroom, online classroom would look like, Dr. Deena.
Thank you very much, Dijonn, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for the invitation. I was very happy to receive it, and knowing that we have panelists from different parts of the world is amazing. I think, we're all in this together, and it's nice to hear the different backgrounds and experiences. So I'm very much looking forward to hear about what other educators around the world are doing and how they're applying this e-learning as we go through this tough period. Now, I want to start on a positive note first. Before I talk about an ideal classroom, the transition we made within the UAE as a whole, we had 2 weeks to go literally from 100% on campus, 100% classroom teaching to 100% online. So for me, what amazed me the most is how the country pulled it off so quickly. We actually switched our spring break back in March. They gave all educators and teachers across the country from every single emirate that break to prepare for 100% online teaching and learning. We've pulled it off, we've managed, and I must say I'm very, very proud of how we've done it, and that's something we'll discuss further along. But, looking at an ideal classroom, for me, as Dr. Rawu was saying, classroom is equal to engagement. So for me, an ideal classroom, whether it's online or in person, are the students engaged? Not just, the delivery of material. Are they with the instructor? Do they look forward to coming to your class? Are they logging in just for the sake of attendance, or are they actually coming in to listen to what you're saying? Are they contributing? And these are the things I think it can be a challenge as well. What are the strategies that we're using for online student engagement. What are we doing across the world in different universities to engage a student online? How is it different in classroom than online? I think this is, then we can start looking at an ideal classroom.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Deena. Elsori, that was, again, quite insightful. And I think some of the success stories you've spoken about, just in terms of changing the whole 100% classroom learning to online learning in that summer break, that is probably one of the hardest and most difficult challenges I've probably heard during this pandemic. Okay, so we're going to turn to our next panelist, and we're going back to the USA. We have Dr. Casper Harteveld, who is joining us, and we'd like to welcome him. He has a lovely background of a palm tree, sunshine, and I'm hoping it's all sunshine and palm trees there, because it isn't where we are in the UK at the moment. So let's meet Dr. Casper Harteveld, who is an Associate Professor of Game Design at Northeastern University. And let us know what you think about the topic today of what an ideal online classroom looks like to you.
Thank you for introducing me, and it's a pleasure to be here with such wonderful people to talk about the really important topic. So I'm a professor of game design, so that's naturally the lens that I'm looking at online environments. And I'm not saying that the ideal classroom should be a game, but I think that we could learn a lot from game research and from what's happening in games, which happen online all the time, specifically in spring 2020. And I think it's just so fascinating. Obviously, it's a horrible period with a lot of devastating effects, but on the other side of it, it's also, as some of the speakers alluded to, a very fascinating period where we could learn something from, but also a moment where we could really reflect back on our education and what we could do differently. And we have very engaging conversations where faculty are sharing their thoughts on how they can do education online. And these are 1.5, 2 hour meetings where other faculty are showcasing the different tools that exist. And it's really fascinating for me to see that everybody is now focused on this. Whereas I feel like we were going into the status quo. Sometimes you go online, sometimes you try something out. It's all individual. But now there's like a really concentrated effort to think about online education, and that really fascinates me. But of course, at the moment that people were switching from traditional to online, they just had to deal with whatever was there. And I ran a study in spring 2020 where one of my games was used, and some of the student responses was like, this was the only school activity that was different from Zoom, and they were just getting drowned out by and bored by all the Zoom activities, whereas normally they would do all kind of in classroom activities. So that's where I think games can play a role as a component to engage students, but also provide a more experiential, practical aspect to students' education. So that would be, obviously my perspective during this talk, and happy to share some of my insights during the conversations.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harteveld. We are going to introduce Roy Simanjuntak, and he's joining us from Indonesia. So welcome, Roy. And Roy is a tech enthusiast, particularly in fintech and education. His initial work with technology was business intelligence. Right now, he is engaging with Indonesian startups as an accelerator and fundraiser. As Vice President, Partnerships of the World Assessment Council in Indonesia, he takes the message of celebrating digital to many educators and universities across Indonesia. Would like to hear your thoughts on this, Roy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dijonn. I will share my experience, how I was exposed to online education, right? And the way I see, online education, I must say I have to say the blunt reality. I think online education is an opportunity for, frankly speaking, dull lecturers, right, to provide, what you call more good delivery of his lecture, and then more multimedia like that. So yeah, I think this is the thing. And commercially, I think there is also a risk if you put someone who's not that interactive in online, and then also cannot communicate so good. I think it also poses to risk, about what do you call your risk of your brand also as a what do you call as a good university. So I think based on this, as I said, I conclude technology and then interactive and then multimedia. This must be included in an online education.
Thank you very much, Roy. What I've just heard from you as well, which I thought was really important, was the risk associated with the brands of university if they don't get it right. And I think that's a real important issue as well in terms of marketing, branding,
Yes.
and delivery. So thank you for sort of raising that issue. I'm going to bring William in first for this question, is because he talked about what we're not doing right and the failures in online education. I'd like to ask you, Bill, how can teachers prepare better for online classrooms? What preparation would you suggest?
No, it's actually the same way, and the same way is professional development. Teachers need to learn how to operate effectively in these online environments. So, and that's hard in the sense that, look, it's easy in the sense that just learn how to do it. It's hard in the sense that there's a lot of resistance to that around legacy professional practices, which people try to translate into the online environment, which don't translate very well. It's as simple as arranging professional development and as hard as that. Now, how much professional development do you need to become a competent online teacher? And by the way, it's not about how to use the software. It's not about how to use the learning management system. It's not about how to use breakout rooms in Zoom. It's not about the technicalities. It's about how do you create the things I was talking about in my initial statement, which is collaborative environments where learners can work together. How do you create active, engaging environments as opposed to ones where the students are passively absorbing content? That anything that is learned in these environments will be lessons that can also be taken back into in-person classrooms as well.
Thank you so much for that, William. So I'd just like to as well come to Dr. Elsori on this, because you spoke about the success that you've had in the UAE with your students and engagement. So what have you done differently from what we've just heard from Dr. William that could be taken from your success and we can apply that across the world?
Thank you, Dijonn. So as I said, for us, it wasn't a choice. We were given 2 weeks to go online. And this is where a lot of our own faculty stood up. And we did not hire any companies or external people to come and train us. Our own faculty within the engineering and IT department, we didn't even know this. They were so experienced tools that they came in, and we call them now the superheroes. Because they came in, started doing, we're talking trainings all day long just to accommodate everybody. So we came together, starting from the general platform for teaching and learning, and then to other additional tools of how to engage students, what kind of quizzes, what kind of tools can we use to kind of interact with our students. So, these are the two things. I think the professional development, also training on student engagement, online student engagement. We all had our ideas, we all came together. And I think, as William was saying, there was some resistance at the beginning. Some faculty, courses like math and physics, for example, they want that classroom, they want that board, they want to see the students. So there was resistance, but eventually everybody felt, yeah, we can do it. It's not as bad as we thought. And then the next step of, obviously, when we were confident enough was to train our own students, because some of them were not happy as well. Oh, this is not what I paid for. I don't want to be taught online. We had a lot of students saying, no, I'm not paying for this. But then again, we had to work very closely with them. We had student trainings. So, and this was pulled off in 2 weeks. And our main concern at the beginning is how to deliver the curriculum. And I think a lot of us just use the same material, but use an online platform. And then we started with the other challenges, assessments and other things came along the way. But all of our concern was, okay, this is our date. We need to all be online and students will be able to log in and see us. We had 2 different modes. Some faculty prefer to pre-record the lectures and then go live just for discussions. And then the second mode, which I personally prefer, is to go live every time with my students, where I just talk to them back and forth, we discuss, record the lecture while I'm teaching, and then upload it after. So these were the 2 modes of delivery we had throughout the online, and we still do, of course, until this day.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Deena. That was encapsulated so well in terms of how to engage the different types of learning in such a short space of time. And I'd just like to come to Casper on this question, because there's some parallels in what Deena just spoke about, engaging in online activity really well and engaging in gaming activity with education really well. So where do you see and how do you sort of fit into that with preparing teachers for the online classroom for education? I think there's, as I said, there's some parallels there. It'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on that as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I think there's and it really depends per discipline, of course, but there's a question about how to engage students in the classroom. You know, when I teach in person, I have the students do a lot of hands-on activities. You know, there's also the notion of the flipped classroom that a lot of people are comfortable with and people are moving into. And so, you know, how can you facilitate or do something like that in an online classroom environment? And as I mentioned, you know, a lot of the students critique, and these are, mind you, engineering students, so they might have a particular expectation of what their education looks like. And even though they really much appreciated that their instructors had to go to the online right away and did the best that they could, they were all complaining that all their lab-based practices were canceled. I mean, that was basically all their comments were just about, you know, I'm an engineering student. You know, for me, the whole reason to be in education or to learn, or the way that I learn, is this hands-on learning, and all my lab-based practices were canceled. And they said the only sort of lab-based practice that I got was playing this game. And so again, I'm not saying that the game is necessarily a substitute for, you know, these lab-based practices, but it's at least a way to think about how can we in some way give students still some sort of experiences or activities that they do. So and I think for educators, this sort of lens of thinking about, you know, how can we still provide some sort of hands-on experiential way of engaging with their students is something to think about. Thinking about the classroom where, you know, you could use in Zoom, you could also separate out in groups where students are working together, sharing screens, where they're working on practical problems, and then the instructor could go from room to room, sort of in the same way you would be doing that in a physical classroom. But you could also supplement that by really some sort of like engaging activities that you can set up. And I think what for me, you know, as a researcher, but I'm not the only one who's thinking about that, is how can we support and empower instructors to provide these kinds of activities, because they're used to providing these activities, you know, in the classroom itself, and there's a whole bunch of tools out there that people can use and be creative around. But it might also be that some of the tools and technologies are not sufficient to support the kind of engagement that we'd like to see online. And, you know, I myself have been working on a tool for instructors to gamify the classroom or allow for some game activities to take place in the classroom that they can quickly create. And as a matter of fact, in a few weeks from now, I'm going to do professional development for teachers at Northeastern, showcasing how they can use some of these tools to include some game activities in their classroom.
Thank you very much for that, Casper. We've covered some of the top on this particular topic. We've also covered some of the questions. So one of the questions was, with the world cautiously opening up, will we be adequately resourced for a fully operational online classroom? Additional learning tools, how are we going to use them effectively? How are we going to have that human resource to do the job that's going to be required if it is going to be an online classroom going forward? So I'm going to hand over to you, Professor Ozden.
Thank you very much. I think the main issue, we are also mentioning some of the tools we are using. For example, Microsoft Teams. When we faced the COVID-19 for the first time, we have started to use Microsoft Teams as a medium. But Microsoft Teams itself is just a video conferencing system. And Microsoft also states that this is not a LMS or LCMS, learning management system or content management system. It's just a video conferencing tool. It will be much better if you use together with the LMS. So they are also defining the proper solution. We need LMS together with the video conferencing system. And at the same time, those tools should be work single sign-on. Because cognitive load is somehow a big issue when you start to use different tools. I mean, when you use video conferencing, different username and password, and then turn into LMS and use another password or something, it's causing a problem. So the basic solution, there should be an LMS for running your regular classroom activities, evaluation, or some other features. And for synchronous type of events, you need a video conferencing system. So if you have both of them, then you are lucky. I did such an integration together with Microsoft tools or Office 365, together with Moodle. Moodle is an open source learning management system, and they are working together single sign-on. Especially if you are using or planning to use Microsoft Teams as an evaluation medium, it's not proper, because it's stating that assignments or quiz, if you have more than 200 students, it's not working. So for overcoming this problem, we have used Moodle because there's no limit for the high numbers of students are taking the same exam. But do not forget, every situation or the case, it has own solutions or problems. In our case, we have created a solution for overcoming this problem. But I know it for many years, starting from the 90s, I'm still working in the distance education field. I know it. Changing habit is somehow the same as changing religion. Faculty always resist to change their habits. But during the COVID-19 period, we have no chance. We should change immediately. For that, for overcoming this problem, I think it's better to conduct professional development programs and introduce this new medium to the faculty. In terms of using this technology, in addition to that, we have to show some additional methodologies for using this new medium. It requires instructors, online instructors, they should have some other features. I can say that those instructors should have administrator, facilitator, technician, evaluator, pedagogical or andragogical skills.
And what I pulled from that was that you were talking about synchronization of some of the many applications that are in use, and to sort of change the habits of what was before, so they're fit for purpose for going forward in this new digitalization area that we're all going to be forced to work in. So thank you very much for that contribution, and that leads us quite nicely into the next question. So what do we do in terms of digital well-being? Now, that's a question that came up in the UK. It has come up a lot in the UK in the past since the pandemic. So how are we going to make students and teaching staff priority now that there's more online learning to be introduced, and the health and well-being of, mentally well-being of that happening? And that is a real issue, because if everything's going to be online, how do we monitor and manage that? And I'm going to come to Dr. Rao on this.
glad that you asked me this question. I would answer it in two parts. One is in terms of technology adoption, and then the human element of it. We did not have the benefit of, say, getting locked down with a prior notice. The government declared lockdown. We had to close our institution on straight away, and we requested the teachers to go online. We already had an LMS, so through that, most of them did manage that, and some who could not use the LMS, they tried to. We have given them the option to whether they go Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whatever platform. While doing so, initial days it was a bit difficult. We were not sure how many of the students are able to get. So we tried to get the information. Remember, in the very beginning, I mentioned not everybody had an access. So on that count, we got the information who are the people who are not able to have the bandwidth or necessary facilities, because being in rural parts of the country, we would have an access to these infrastructure facilities. So once we came to know, and once we had the data, that information, so we tried to send the lessons to them in advance. All the teachers did that, whether it's PowerPoint or slides or all that. So these people did not miss, or even the video lessons. So they may not have been sitting in the classroom live, but the number is only about 5%. So we made sure that every single student is talked to. This is where I will come to the human element. My university says, MIT World Peace University, a university for life transformation. When I talk about life transformation, we focus on, in normal times or even COVID times, we talk about the human element. We give more than education is what I would like to say. We took care of every single student. We divided the mentor and mentee. And then each of the student was talked to by a teacher. And record was maintained and asking. And remember, this is the vice chancellor, which is close to the some universities, we call the president of the university. I made sure pick up the phone during the lockdown and especially in the initial days to talk to every single teacher, ask him or her, how are you? Whether you need any support from the institution in terms of delivery or in terms of social support or in whatever manner. So we thought people are more important. Okay, technology, lessons would go. So LMS was there, platforms were there, so lessons were delivered. And we also took care of the next year admissions. Maybe I don't know if I have time for the next round. I would also explain how WAC, World Assessment Council, helped us in our digital transformation. We also did not hamper our admissions, the next year admissions. Just one example, we would say that we have more applications than the seats that we have. So we necessarily had to conduct an online test, a proctored test, for which WAC helped us. So we made sure that the people, even whether it's digital, we went digital easily. We also gave that human side. I think these two sides, dividing it into two parts, the technology part and human side, we succeeded in making a very healthy people. So I always talk about the people first. So we have adopted the people first approach. I think I answered that question.
I think you answered it very well. Very impressed by the fact that you picked up the telephone to speak to students, just to find out how they were doing, which is really the human element of this whole pandemic. I mean, we lose sight, really, don't we, what we need in terms of our emotional contact as well, because we're all online, we're trying to fit in, we're trying to do, and we lose sight of that sometimes. So I think
just one sentence I would want to add. The whole approach was based on, instead of focusing for tomorrow, we should not forget today. So that's what approach we adopted, that we should take care of the people of today instead of planning for future. Don't forget for tomorrow, don't forget today. So thank you.
Thank you for that last addition, and that's absolutely fantastic that you've just made that comment so succinct. And it's about managing, for tomorrow. So if we're not in the full health place that we need to be today, we're just going to struggle tomorrow. So, I mean, health and well-being is a real important topic, and I think we all agree that we need to make sure that our students, and not just the students, the staff as well, because it's really heavy on the staff to be doing the additional work, because I guess all the planning and the work that goes into the classroom, subjects and what areas you're actually in, and then to pull that online, sometimes it doesn't always translate online. I think somebody mentioned that before. So being able to facilitate that and do it really well must have some consequences in terms of, your emotional and health and well-being online. So we have to move on. So I'm going to say that we really need to take that issue as a real priority for us as well as our students. So thank you for the contributions.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, sure,
Deena. We go on to the next one, because we're actually also doing something great in that area. Our student service support department has done actually an amazing job throughout the past few months as far as co-curricular engaging activities. So we wanted to shift, not just focus on the academic part, because our students are so active on campus. We have things like happy hours. We have things like engagement games, virtual engagement games, where they would announce on weekly basis, whether it's a chess tournament, whatever it is. Students will join in the dorm, especially those that were stuck here because they're international students. We had to make sure that they're still engaged outside of the classroom. We had a lot of fitness and wellness challenges for both staff and faculty and students. There were competitions, and it was all done virtually. We had Zumba classes for staff and faculty on weekly basis. And I think it is a very important aspect. As Dr. Raouf was saying, we had our HR call every single leader in the university to check on our well-being. Our counselor was available to student and staff 24/7. Just to make sure we're supported. Students have spoken to us about their mental health issues during that period more than ever. As Associate Dean of Student Affairs, I've spoken one-on-one to so many students outside the academic boundaries. So I think this was very, very essential during that period as well. So no, definitely, I think universities and educators can do a big part in that aspect as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Deena. Just to add to what we'd already heard, we just feel as though, I guess we're all feeling as though this is another area on its own that we probably need to speak about, because it is such an important area and an important topic. But thank you for your contributions there. As we move on, the question that I'm going to ask is, why are online classrooms not a temporary stopgap, but a future strategy for universities and schools to stay relevant in the future?
I think we missed one point. Online education is recorded. I think recorded must be compulsory to the online education. If it is recorded, you can listen, you can watch the lecture 10 times, 20 times until you understand. Mm-hmm. Face-to-face lecture, you miss the class, you don't get it. So this is something we need to highlight also. If we have this kind of recorded, what we call it, lectures, we can say to the parents, okay, but the good thing, there is a plus minus in that. So this is a counter argument that we can provide. And the other thing is also, we must be very, very careful. We cannot convey them a message, that okay, right now COVID, definitely the way I see online classes is a substitute or a contingent to the face-to-face classes, right? But in the future, I think, as I mentioned just now, online classes must be a part of the face-to-face classes. Because what if a class is truly only face-to-face, right? The way I see the education system is outdated, right? Because what? Because kids now, they spend, I think, 8 to 10 hours with the gadget, right? It's an opportunity for teachers also to teach, off the classes, but online connecting with them. So this is the way I see the opportunity, right? So, and the other thing also I want to say, for me, right? If what you call it, the way I see one measurement about that the school is well developed is the way are they delivering online education, right? Because this is what you call it. What I will say, they are what we call impact of education technology, right? The way in the early 2000s, right? I mean, the students of the top business schools, right? They are already complaining, oh, when you professors are teaching about technology. Now I want to see, do you do that also in your school? Walk the talk.
May I add something to support Roy's whatever said, especially on the recorded videos? For many years, I had accumulation of the results of some experiments using recorded videos. I know that if you are recording videos and serving to students after the lecture, their final grades nearly 5 points higher than the face-to-face.
Wow.
I have a collective result for it.
Who are actually can look at the lessons that have been recorded, and they can learn as well at the same time as to what the children are learning, which is, I've always been a real advocate of being able to have parental engagement with any kind of learning, because I just think it makes so much sense to do that. So thank you, an excellent point, and a real excellent way in engaging parents in the learning as well. So as we move on, how can online learning be more accessible to those from different backgrounds, ages and experiences, and what mechanisms can be implemented to close the disparity gap?
So I have a program, in my program I have people who are teachers, and they are able to be in the program because it's online. It's fully online. My program is fully online. But let me give an even broader example. I have had 35,000 students do those courses, and they're $49 per course. It's the same course that I teach to the same courses that I teach to my master's and doctoral students. So there are phenomenal potentials to give access to people in these environments, because we don't have to pay to build classrooms, and we don't have to, and we can scale up. We can have thousands of people doing the courses. So, for me, there are phenomenal potentials for access. The majority of the people who do my MOOCs are in developing countries, people who could never afford to come to the United States, could never afford the fees, and I give them exactly the same content that I give my master's and doctoral students. So this is where the future is in higher ed, and the reason why I work in this area is because there are these incredible potentials for access.
Thank you very much. There is a debate of, there's going to be for and against, and I think it has to be a blend of some sort. My company, Savvy Guest, we started to facilitate pre-career conversations. So it would be an online platform that ended up with a face-to-face meetup with, people in industry. And as the pandemic came, we had to tweak it, so it was a virtual meetup, and it works really well in both settings. So I think there is, there's definitely room for blending learning, face-to-face and online classroom learning. As we're moving on to time, we've got about 5 minutes of key takeaways for implementing online classrooms successfully. And mine is collaboration. My one word, if we all had a word of what we will take away from today, and from some of the speakers that we've heard who have really shown us and really given us an insight into what's happening in their countries as well, which is, it's beautiful, because this is the beauty of online debates, and I don't get to speak to people in the UAE and Turkey and India and Indonesia and America. I don't get to do that on a day-to-day basis. So this is the beauty. This is a real good example of online working, and how it can work, and how you can share experiences, and what we can take away from that, and go away and do our research, and then we maybe connect with these world leaders here just to ask questions. The beauty of that is online, and we can't sort of go away and not think that this isn't the future, because it really is. So my takeaway today is collaboration, and I'll just ask each of you as we go along, I'll sort of just shout your name to say what we got from today, real key takeaways for implementing classroom successfully. So I'll start with Casper because you're at the front of my screen.
There's been a lot of different thoughts on this, but I think we all realize the magnitude of this moment for education and what that could mean. We see, and also I think an important takeaway is just the potential for online education. I know that a lot of educators have always been, not wanting to go into that direction, but now realizing the positives of that and what that could bring to their education. And I don't know what the future will bring, but it will definitely be different. And I also thought it was really important to not just think about the future, but also about tomorrow and today. But yeah, I'm generally excited to see what the next couple of months and year is going to bring, because there's definitely a lot of excitement and energy towards changing education right now.
Okay, thanks, Casper. And coming across to Professor Ozden.
Nothing will be the same. All over education, what we have defined until now, and we should think about technological competencies and integrate into all of the fields available. Those type of education, not only the university students, I have told that K-12, starting from the primary school, we should educate all the new generations.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Professor Ozden. Deena, can we have your closing thoughts and your takeaways?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for this wonderful session. As you guys are talking, the word that popped in my mind is globalization. Again, living in the UAE, living in the Middle East, I think I am so excited to what's coming ahead. I mean, I think we've had the technology all these years, but we've never used it at our university. And I think we were scared, actually. We didn't want to go there. No, let's give it a few more years of typical classroom learning, especially with the undergraduate students. Now that we're confident we can do it, that we're getting very positive feedback after one semester, I think we're ready to expose our students to the rest of the world without having to leave the UAE, because sometimes the culture plays a role. A lot of the females, they cannot go or they cannot study abroad. Now we can expose them to different education, whether in Turkey, US, UK, and I think a lot of people will be exposed to us as well. So we're extremely excited about this opportunity, and I think this is the way forward.
Thank you, Deena. Globalization. That is a real powerful word, and absolutely, I get it. So I'm going to come to Dr. Raoul and your takeaway, and I know you're going to have some words of wisdom there for us, Dr. Raoul.
I'm a people's man. For me, the online education classroom that we have been talking about, we are talking about the delivery. For me, education is much more than that. I want an electrical engineer to get a shock while he's doing his experiments in electronics labs. Right? I want a mechanical engineer to grease his hands. I want an artist, painter. I want him to spill ink all over him. I want a student of music to be breaking his vocal cords. I want all of them to go to the canteen, spend time. That's what education is. That's what the life is. Let's not limit education to online and then only delivery. Delivery is one part of it. Education is much more than that. That's what I want all the institutions to focus. Give life to the students, the energetic students. That's what life is about, and that's what education is about. That's what my message. Thank you. I really enjoyed every one of your contributions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks from India.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raya. Thank you. Moving on, we're going to come to Roy.
Online education is an integral and essential part of education. So never say it is a substitute. If you don't have an online education in your programs, this means you are not adaptive towards the 21st century education. You fail. One thing. Second thing, technology should improve the interaction between students and educators. Right? what I'm trying to say, you are professors and also students must use technology to improve interaction between us.
Thank you, Roy. You summarised that so well. Thank you very, very much for those contributions. And last but not least, William.
Look, I mean, we've covered a whole lot of issues today, and I think one area that we need to be thinking about as well, and is the word assessment, which is the middle word of the World Assessment Council as well. So I think another area is the way in which we conduct assessment in these environments, which again I think needs to be very, very different. What we can do, we were talking about everything being recorded. If everything's recorded, everything can be assessed. So the possibility of continuous and complete assessment, comprehensive assessment of everything changes the assessment game in some quite profound ways. So with educational data mining and artificial intelligence, we can fundamentally change the game in online education because we can data mine what every student's done, and therefore we don't need a test at the end because everything becomes assessment. So that's my kind of last word about thinking where we might go in the future.
Well, thank you, brilliant. I will just want to sort of conclude today's session. We've spoke about face-to-face learning and digital learning and which is better than the other, and I think it's all so important. We need to get a grip on it all. Health and well-being is a real priority that we spoke about, and I was thinking as I wrote some of those notes down, do we have to implement digital detoxes? Is that something that we will need to do in the future? Because we do that in our normal everyday. We sit down and we have a detox every 3 months and get away from, what that sort of environment does for us. So is digital detox a way forward in this new environment? I don't know. I'm just sort of summarising what I've heard. And I think some of the key things is that there are going to be lots of opportunities. And I read something quite recently about the environment and the job roles where people are most happiest at the moment during pandemic, and IT came on top, and that's because it fits very well into the world of IT and gaming, Casper. So they're very happy people, and education came quite low because I think the transition from face to face to online is a fear factor that Deena, you also spoke about. But in all of this, I do think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us all to learn, to grow, and to collaborate around the world. We've got a window that's open to worldwide learning through digitalisation, and I really hope, and I really know that from some of the comments that you've all made, that we will go forward as we finalise our session today. I look forward to hearing from you all at some point in the future and hopefully meeting you all face to face. And really, let's take this message of the worldwide online classroom being the way forward, and the support and mechanisms that go with that, taking that forward with the World Assessment Council as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
This webisode of Educators This Week is brought to you by no other than Talent, the superhero of online assessments, a product built in association with 1,600 educators and which has empowered over 500 universities and schools globally to go online through online classrooms, online courses and virtual examination centres. Talent is on a noble mission to empower every educator on earth with its AI, that's artificial intelligence, based digital tools. For more about the outstanding solutions and free credits for educators, visit talentforeducation.com. That's talentforeducation.com. Thank you for joining in. See you in the next session of Educators This Week.